Hey, welcome to Landing Your Next Gig in Tech. 10 million. That is the number of people in the US who lost their jobs just within a 2 week period at the end of March. What this means is that there's now a flood of new people in the job market all at the same time. However, businesses are also reducing the number of open positions to better cope with the hardships brought on by the pandemic.
And for you, this means more competition for the available jobs. So, what can you do to stand out? Well, that's what we're here to talk about today.
I'm Annyce Davis, or Brown Girl Dev on Twitter. I work as Director of Engineering at EMEA, and part of my primary job responsibilities is the hiring and recruiting of engineers.
And I'm Wesnie. I've been an Android developer for 3 years. I'm currently working at iHeartRadio, helping to improve their music application. And trust me, I know a lot about the job search journey.
And together, we're going to walk through each of the primary stages of the hiring funnel. We'll share the goal, best practices, and tips for how you can stand out, starting with the resume or CV review.
Then we'll talk about the recruiter phone screen,
Then we'll go through the hiring manager phone screen,
the technical phone screen,
and then finally the onsite.
To help make this talk more practical, we'll base it on a fictitious job posting for a mid-level engineer. Now, I'm not going to read this word for word, but here's a quick highlight of the overview and a close-up of the requirements. We'll see how the job posting plays a large role in how you structure your resume and conversation. So let's get into it. The posting is for Star Electric, and as you can see, they're looking for a mid-level engineer who has familiarity with the newest technologies and that they've had technical experience as well as experience working with others.
So let's get started with the resume or CV review. This is the very first stage of the funnel. And typically, for a mid level engineering position, you're probably competing with over 200 other applicants. So you want to make sure you get this right. The goal of this stage is to market yourself and get an interview. And you can successfully market yourself by including relevant projects and work history, documenting the technologies and libraries that you're familiar with, and then keeping your resume very succinct and metrics focused. Let's look at an example. Here's a resume for Mary Jones. We're going to look at the three sections: the objective, the skills, and the experience, and we'll see how we can help Mary to stand out. Starting with the objective, I would like to work full time as an Android developer. This doesn't tell the reviewer anything about Mary that isn't already obvious. She applied for the position. Of course, she wants to work full time as an Android developer. We can do much better. Let's analyze this version. Dedicated and experienced Android developer with proven success in developing high quality user experiences, seeking an opportunity to use my knowledge to collaborate closely with design and backend teams on a meaningful product. Let's highlight why this works. First of all, you're including the fact that you're experienced right here in your objective. The job requirements specifically mention that they're looking for someone who can collaborate with design and backend. So why not include that in your personal objective? So also you're saying, I want to work on a meaningful product. So that shows that you potentially would be someone who would be invested in this particular application or company. Check, check, check. Next, here's the skills section. It's just a long list of expert at this and expert at that. And we can do way better. First of all, it goes without saying that you shouldn't lie on your resume. Uh, you want to leave these kind of details about your proficiency for later on in the funnel. And if you're a mid level engineer, it's very unlikely that you're already an expert at all of these different things. What's more, it will put you in an awkward situation when it comes time to verify your employment. Or worse yet, you get the job and then you can't even do the work. Instead, I prefer a format similar to this. You can just stick with the facts and deal with the proficiency later on. It's also much easier to scan and see that the major job requirements have been met. Remember, you're competing with over 200 other people. Also, it takes up less space on the page. This means that you can use it for more relevant things like your experience. And speaking of experience, here's what we have from Mary so far: improving test coverage, transforming the app, implementing new features. No, it's pretty boring and it definitely will not stand out to a reviewer. We have to give more. This is one of the best ways to structure the bullets in your job experience. I love using this formula. I accomplished X as measured by Y by doing Z. Let's see an example. Contributed to transforming our app to a multi module app. Instead, we could say something like this: transformed our Android application into a multi module app by introducing dynamic feature modules, which lowered our build times by 35%. Much better. When formulating your bullets, make sure you use words that have power and really grab the reader's attention, like sustained and formalized, developed, coordinated. All of those things will help your resume to stand out. So now we've updated Mary's resume. We've included the different tips that we've shared. We've also added her GitHub handle and LinkedIn URL. This is the type of resume that is sure to stand out and make it to the next stage of the funnel. So for you, make sure that you cover the requirements in the job posting. Use action verbs and metrics. We saw those things like sustained and yielded. Also, include links to GitHub and any published apps. If you do these things, you'll be well on your way to the next stage of the funnel.
The next phase is the recruiter phone screen. It's the initial impression that you'll have on the company, and it's important to know how to navigate this first step. The goal of this phase is to show the recruiter that you share the same values and that you would be a good fit. Before having this interview, it's best to do your research on the company and think about potential questions to ask. You'll also want to make sure you show sincere interest and let the recruiter know about your desired salary. Some examples of research to do during this stage is to look at websites like Glassdoor to see what it's like to work there. It's also best to Google the latest company news and see info on your interviewee. That way you have things to talk about and questions to ask during the interview about the company as a whole. Look, it doesn't help anyone for you not to provide your desired salary. The recruiter is looking for someone that meets their range, and you don't want to waste your own time for a job that's below your expectations. If you're not sure where to look for information about average salaries for your role and location, consider checking out websites such as levels.fyi, which allows you to easily compare salaries. Show sincere interest in the company. You can do that by having your story, which is a prepared story, but don't sound rehearsed, of why you admire the company. Here's an example. I've always had a keen interest in music from a very young age. I also take on the role as being car DJ for every road trip that I go on. Because of this, I chose to work at iHeartRadio to see an inside look of how music is shared with the mass population. Some points to help you stand out to the recruiter are: make sure you've done your research and that you have an interest in the company. You'll also want to make sure you're up to date with the latest technologies, since you might be questioned on that during this round. It's also important that you're serious about moving forward. The recruiter that you interview with is often working with a specific timeline. Sometimes they'll only have about 2 to 3 weeks to fill that position, which is why it's important to not waste your time or theirs. Be ready. You'll also want to demonstrate intellectual curiosity. Talk about a time where you've introduced a new technology or process to your team that had an impact on results. Show that you're a fast learner who could easily grow at the company. An example could be, I initiated working with MVI because I felt that it would be a good software architecture to implement into our code base since it was a mess before. I decided to create a sample project and show it to my manager during our one on one session. And eventually, I showed it to my teammates. My teammates were so impressed by the simplicity of using MVI that we all decided that we would migrate the code base. And this change helped us to simplify the code base and improve our productivity.
Thanks for that, Wesnie. So now we're going to move over to the hiring manager phone screen. This is where I personally get to chat with them and find out about their career journey and then where they see themselves going next. It's also my chance to see, like, is this person going to be a good fit for the team, and then vice versa. The goal of this phase is to establish a relationship, right? As the interviewee, you want to start building a relationship at this point. Whether it's fair or not, we hire people that we like and that we feel can do the job. So, establishing a relationship with the hiring manager is important as they're often the final decision maker. And you can do this by being prepared for the tell me about yourself. Demonstrate that you can do the job and then effectively tell your story. So, we're going to look at these three things in a bit closer detail. First, tell me about yourself. This is not just the time to read through your resume. Likely, the hiring manager has already done that. Instead, tell me about yourself is more like convince me what it is about you that makes you the perfect person for this job. It's your personal elevator pitch. You have 1 to 2 minutes to give an explanation of how you would benefit the team and the organization. This is your chance to sell yourself. For example, here is my personal elevator pitch. Um, I'm a detail oriented, impact focused leader. I thrive in challenging environments and I bring clarity to the ambiguous. I love to share what I learn with others. I use my ability to break complicated things down into simpler pieces to help elevate others, not only internal, but external to the company. That's it. With just a few sentences, I've unveiled what it is that I bring to an organization. I also mentioned that you want to be able to tell your story. This is your chance to go beyond being just likable. This is where you have the opportunity to really sell what it is that you know based on each of the job requirements. So here, the hiring manager is looking to say, okay, how long have they been doing Android? Do they know these things? Great. Check, 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 check. As an example, if the hiring manager were to say, well, tell me about a project while you were working at ABC Studios, you could say, I converted the app from Java to Kotlin. That's true. Or you could say, oh, yes, ABC Studios. That was a great experience for me. That was the year that Google officially announced Kotlin was a first class language. I had the opportunity to convert our app from Java to Kotlin. In fact, we were running on both phones and watches at that time. So engaging, much more conversational. It does all the things. So, how can you really stand out? These are the things that you want to focus on. Try out the product. It's so weird when someone wants to work for your company as an app developer, but they've never downloaded the app, right? At least check it out in the App Store before the interview. Know something about your interviewer. Look them up on LinkedIn. Try to find some common ground that you can talk to them about. Come prepared with some questions. If you don't have any questions at all, it comes across as if you're not really interested in the job, and that's definitely not what you want. Here's a sampling of a few questions that I personally ask when I'm interviewing. Like what's the ideal candidate like for this job? Describe your leadership style. What's the rest of the team like? You learn a lot, and at the same time, it shows that you're really interested in the company.
This phase is where we get a chance to show our skill set to someone from the team that you'll be hired for. It usually comes with a challenge in order to gauge your skill set and give employers an idea of how you would perform when given a task. The goal of this round is to highlight your technical skills and demonstrate how you would perform on the job. You'll want to study beforehand to brush up on your technical skills and also have questions ready. You'll either be given an algorithm to solve, a take-home coding challenge, or a live coding session. For either one, it's best to prepare so that it's easier to get through the roadblocks. To prepare, you'll have to do research on the latest technologies and put them into practice. Also, be ready to discuss your prior work experience and projects. You'll also want to have questions ready to show interest. My process when preparing for a tech phone screen is visiting websites on guidelines and the latest technologies. I use what I learned to then work on small projects using those technologies. Examples of technologies that I might research are using Jetpack components, Swift UI, coroutines, Work Manager, view models, or Room. For my last interview, I was tasked with learning about coroutines, and I had to work on a coding challenge to show my skills. Here's an example of one website I used as part of my research for this coding challenge. You can use any website with official documentation to implement a coding challenge. For algorithm-based questions, preparing will involve using websites such as LeetCode and HackerRank to practice your problem-solving skills. As a heads up, many companies will also have you add a new feature to their application as part of the challenge. So it's a good idea to make sure that you have used their product. When interviewing for iHeart, for example, I was asked to design a system for organizing songs. For the tech phone screen, it's very important that you're able to discuss your solution. This gives the person interviewing you an idea of your thought process, and it allows them to see how you would work through a problem. To stand out in this phase, you must be able to discuss your solution and thought process. If you're able to get through the solution before the time is up, they'll most likely have you solve a harder question, or they might ask you to add tests, clean the code, or enhance the UI. You must also be prepared for questions that you might not know the answer to. Instead of saying that, I don't know, you can say, I don't have much experience with such and such technology, but I do know this about that technology. That way, you're still answering the question and demonstrating your skill set.
Thanks, Wesnie. These days, you're probably doing an on-site virtually. So we wanted to share some tips that can assist you in this new form of interviewing. The goal of the on-site is to land the job, right? And you can do this if you tailor your response to the interviewer's role, be personable but professional, prepare in advance for any technical exercises. So, did you know that for over 20% of people interviewed in this survey, they make hiring decisions within the first 1 to 5 minutes of talking to someone? Since that's the case, you really need to make the most of this time and get started off right. One of the best things you can do is tailor your response to the interviewer's role. As you've seen so far, the recruiter has a slightly different goal than the hiring manager, which also differs slightly from the engineer on the team who's trying to assess your technical skills. You'll want to be able to demonstrate to all of them that you are the right person for the job. So then, when they come back together and share their takeaways on their interview, your name is the name that's at the top of the list. Now, if you're having the on site virtually, be professional. Make sure that your video background isn't busy, dirty clothes everywhere. Just, be professional. You don't want to distract anyone. Also, dress appropriately, at least up top. You want to show that you're taking this seriously. And finally, make sure you're prepared for any technical exercises that you may have to participate in. Often there might be a whiteboarding exercise or pairing on a tech problem with an engineer on the team. Just make sure you ask in advance what the on-site process looks like so that you're not surprised the day of and you can go into this experience feeling very confident. If you want to stand out during the virtual on-site, make it a conversation. Don't only just wait for them to ask you questions, ask questions of your own, have a dialogue. Provide supporting evidence for anything that you talk about. One thing I like to do is think of three main situations from my previous one or two job experiences, and then I try to apply that to a variety of circumstances. That makes me feel more comfortable and more confident when I'm providing supporting evidence. Also, keep it positive. If they say, well, why are you looking? Because I like new opportunities. Don't go and bash your current company. That's always a no no. And finally, try not to harp on the perks. Asking about commuter reimbursements, nah, do those things after you have an offer.
But what if you've been in the industry for a while and you're looking for a senior level or management type position? Then you'll have to approach things slightly different. You'll want to think more about the behavioral aspects of the interviews and then make sure that you're communicating them effectively. For some of you on the call, English might not be your first language. Does that mean that you're out of the running? Of course not. Instead, you'll want to use the STAR method to address the behavioral questions, like tell me about a time when, or what's your greatest weakness, etc. And you can do this by preparing in advance. Let's use this example. Tell me about a time when you made a mistake. Brainstorm a few examples of particular scenarios in your past experience, and think through how to discuss the scenario using the STAR framework. To answer this question, we'll use this example. I accidentally overwrote my coworker's code the day before a release. We can use this statement as a situation. Your task would be that you had to get your coworker's changes back. The action could be that you stayed up all night and took a series of Git steps to retrieve your coworker's work. And the result would be that you were able to retrieve your coworker's work. So your response would be something like this. There was one time when I overwrote my coworker's changes when we were working on the same branch. Since the release was the next day, I had to act fast and get the branch back to how it was. I then decided to stay up throughout the night to fix this. And doing so allowed me to get the branch fixed in time. It allowed me to get the branch fixed in time for the release.
And that's it. We've gone through each stage of the hiring funnel. We really hope that you learned at least one thing that's going to help improve your next job search experience. When you put all of these techniques into practice, you can look forward to getting hired. Thank you so much, and we'll move over to the questions. Okay. So I get my mouse back. Okay. So let's take a look. Okay, so here we go. The first question, what do you recommend to do if you know and really like a lot about Go routines and flow, but only a little about it RX, and the position has a requirement for RX? Okay, I'll let you take this one first, Wesnie.
For this question, I would definitely do some research on RX beforehand, just to make sure that you are communicating that you are familiar with RX. But if you really like flow and coroutines, then I would definitely mention that, just so that they if the company hasn't been open to that, maybe they might consider it, and they see that it's something that you're passionate about. So yes, definitely do some research beforehand and share that you know about coroutines and flow.
Yeah, that's great advice. Also, it doesn't hurt to just research ARCs. I happen to know GDE has a great introductory talk to ARCs Java that you could watch, and then during the conversations, you would say something like, "I am familiar with RX," but you wouldn't be like proficient or an expert in. Okay. Let's see. What is the Okay, I don't see the questions anymore. Um, so was that it? Okay, here we go. What other strategies would you recommend when looking for a consulting position? Okay, that's a great question. For consultants, you want to be able to point to more, you need more evidence. You need more supporting evidence. One thing you saw in the resume review for Mary Jones, the revised version, is that we added some links to the apps. So for consultants, you want to really focus on statistics, how you've improved things using real metrics, and as many links to public things as possible. So that's for consulting, you need proof and also probably like public proof. If there's like a blog that you have or from other things that you can point to say like, look, this is my presence. I am an expert at these things. Okay, I don't know. Do we still have more time? Okay. I am happy to respond to these things also on social media, Brown Girl Dev, if you have more questions as well. Okay. I still see them coming, so we're going to keep answering. All right, Wesnie, the next one. How long do you think it will take to restudy solving HackerRank problems if you haven't done any in a really long time?
So it really depends on like how quickly you're able to solve the problems. I would definitely recommend taking some time every day leading up to the interview, like maybe 2 to 3 hours, where you are practicing each of the problems in whether it's HackerRank or LeetCode, and I would also recommend reading the book Cracking the Coding Interview. That definitely helps, but definitely take time each day to study. But yeah, it varies. It could be 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month. Um, but like studying definitely helps you get stronger at the problems.
Yep. And start studying before you actually need a job. Like that's really the thing. You don't want to wait until you're out of a job to start doing it. Just kind of do it in the background consistently. Okay, thank you for that question. The next one, would you advise adding links to technical articles you've written, links to your blog page on sites like Medium on your CV? I link to my blog on my CV. I don't link to all the technical articles, but I do link to my blog. So yes, I would advise that. What's the best strategy? Should I ask for more salary than I expect to get in case or for a lower one to get the job? Always ask for more.
I think,
Always ask for more. That's a great question, but you always ask for more. Chances are you will not get it. So you always ask for more.
yep.
Um, okay, I think that's it.